Black Ops 7 Zombies. There's been a leak surrounding this game that I'm sure almost everybody watching this video, if not everybody, has already heard. And if you guys haven't somehow, even if you click on this video, feel free to click it off because, you know, congratulations. I don't know how you avoided it. But what that leak is that in Black Ops 7 Zombies, we're going to be having the return of the OG crew. And yes, that means we're going to be playing as Richtofen, Nikolai, Dempsey, and Takeo once again. Now, I've actually talked about this in a separate video, and what I was mainly being the focus of in that video was just Treyarch just not messing them up. But this time around, I want to get more of the storyline side of this, because it's kind of interesting, because as you guys know, there's a lot of different versions of these characters that we even saw in the original timeline. We had the original Ultimus characters, the ones that started off in World at War and, you know, kind of ended in Black Ops 1, but kind of popped up here and there at times after that. But then, of course, you had the new versions, the younger versions, the Primus version of these characters that were first introduced to us in Origins, then kind of had their story wrapped up in Black Ops 4. I would kind of say maybe somewhere around there, but, you know, that is the two main crews. Now, at the same time, there were other versions of the characters that popped up, these 1.0 versions that we saw in Black Ops 3 and then even read about in Black Ops 4, but those are like the main ones people talk about when we're talking about the OG characters. And the question is, are we going to play as those characters exactly, like once again they're come back to life or whatever it may be, and we're going to play as them again, or are we going to be playing as a new version of these characters? Because the leak isn't very specific about that. They just say that they're kind of this middle-aged version of the characters, because if you think about the original characters, Primus was like the younger versions. They were like in their 30s, like low 30s, kind of around there, and then the Ultimates version, they were in like their 60s. But according to the leak, they're kind of that middle ground, maybe 40s, 50s type of area, kind of middle-aged type of guys. And that is kind of where the leak currently was, and that's all we really know about it. And that really kind of throws it off a bit because you can't really get too much for that, but it might give one hint to something that we'll get into later. But first, I want to talk about the idea that these are going to be the original characters and they're going to be straight up returning into the game and how that would work story-wise. And I think our best hint for this is actually our very first teaser for Black Ops 7 Zombies. And that's where they tell us that at least the first map, if not all the maps, are going to be taking place in the heart of the Dark Ether, or just the Dark Ether in general. And this would kind of make sense story-wise, because if you guys remember the ending of the Ether storyline, what happened to literally all of that multiverse and all of the corruption, all the 115, our characters, the maps, literally all of it? Well, that's what Nikolai did to end all of the corruption, or at least what he tried to do to end all the corruption, was just banish that all to the Dark Ether. So that would imply everything from the old timeline is still there. And this is something that's already been confirmed in our first ever map in the Dark Ether story. There is a radio on Die Maschine talking about someone who is trapped in the Dark Ether who's seen things that are definitely related to the original timeline, like the Origins robots, maybe even the dragon from both the Ryzen rocket and Gorod Krovi and stuff like that.
I've seen medieval structures alongside 21st century buildings. I've seen ancient storybook creatures and mechanical monsters straight from a science fiction novel.
That is something that is confirmed. Like, we know that stuff is down there for sure, but are our characters down there? Well, right away, I think if we think about the characters, if it is going to be one of these crews returning, it's probably not going to be Ultimus, because they're already old, and then already by the description, we heard that they're not as old as the Ultimus characters, so you can't really go backwards in age, I don't think. So I don't think it'd be them. So if anything, it would be the Primus characters, right? Well, yeah, that would be our best guess, but there's always just one problem with either of these crews returning in general, and that's the fact that they're all freaking dead. I mean, we've all saw the ending to Tag der Toten. Nikolai poisons everyone and then has Samantha shoot him. Like, they're all dead. So how are they coming back to life? Well, I've heard some theories going around here, mainly by TGR, talking about how they could be kind of memories of them. It's not really the characters, it's their memories that are still existing in the Dark Ether, kind of similar to the liminal spaces that we saw in Shattered Veil, or even the ghostly figures that we saw in going back all the way to Die Maschine and then maps after that, where there's like kind of these remakes of these characters, but obviously they're still dead, but it's kind of their memories kind of still living in that place. And I mean, maybe that could be the case. It could. I wouldn't say that that's impossible, but it would be kind of strange, because where could you really take this if we're just living through memories? Like, how do you advance a story in that way? And I mean, there are also some theories about like this idea of this new villain in Black Ops 7 Zombies, that maybe the Shadow Smiths or something entirely different, that it could be that they are trying to bring back that original crew, and they're maybe using those liminal spaces, their memories that are trapped in the Dark Ether, to somehow revive them. That could also be also a possibility that kind of bring them back there, because supposedly all of their essence is still down there. But at the same time, something that people really like to bring up with this and throw this idea completely out there, because even if our characters are down there, or even their memories, like, they should be like really long forgotten, because keep in mind, time in the Dark Ether goes by way faster compared to the regular time. If I'm not mistaken, it's 10 times faster. So you spend 10 years inside the Dark Ether. In the regular world, it's going to be 10 years, but then in the Dark Ether, it's going to be 100 years. So I don't know exactly when this universe just started existing, but if we assume it just started like a regular universe, Big Bang, and then all the way till 1991 or 2035, whatever the year the Black Ops 7 is going to take place in, like, that's going to be literally millennia, like things that have been going on forever, right? Like, those things should be long forgotten. And I mean, it would kind of make sense, because if the theories about the map The Tomb are correct, and that Dark Ether area is literally the Origins mound just after millennia being trapped in the Dark Ether, we all see how it's changed a lot. Like, just the general structures are there. Again, that's just a theory. We don't know if that's actually true, but at the same time, you could counter that argument that even though these things have been in there in Dark Ether, for some reason they've been able to survive in it all this time. Because if we call back to the radio I brought up earlier in Die Maschine, there's a character who was trapped in the Dark Ether who actually saw these things from the original maps. They saw the Origins robots. They're still in there, so maybe there's some way they're being preserved in some way that we're just not understanding currently. And I mean, there's literal proof that it is right there. And probably our biggest hint that the character's essence in some way is still in the Dark Ether is that in the map Forsaken, the Forsaken himself told us that there's an old Dark Ether saying.
As the old Dark Ether saying goes, you're all out of rabbits.
And this saying is literally from Ultimus Richtofen.
Sadly, no. I am all out of rabbits.
This is one of the quotes he said at the campfire during Tag der Toten. So right there alone, we have evidence that there is at least some essence of our characters still in there. There is that explanation for why, even though things have been there in millennia, we already have evidence that somehow they have found a way to persist all this time later. But the major problem with all of these ideas is that they're just really contingent on things that we just don't know. We're assuming that maybe the memories are trapped down there, and we're going to be playing through maybe liminal spaces, or maybe the Shadow Smith is going to revive them through their liminal spaces that have been still there, or their memories that are trapped down there in the Dark Ether. And I mean, that could all very well happen, because, you know, it's a story at the end of the day. The Treyarch could write however they want. But I think there's another possibility that we do have to consider. And that's a possibility that we're going to be playing as those same characters, but the new Dark Ether version of these characters. And I think we have two huge pieces of evidence for this being the case. And I think the biggest one is that we already have a new Richtofen. I mean, technically this Richtofen is from the original multiverse, but that's a thing we're not getting into. But regardless, we already have Richtofen right now, Janus Richtofen, as I like to call him. And I mean, he kind of fits that age range that we've already heard from the leaks, that he's in this middle age range. He's not as young as Primus, but he's not as old as Ultimus. So to me, it already fits in that you have Janus Richtofen. And even if you did bring back Primus or Ultimus or whatever, I mean, what happens to Janus Richtofen? He's just going to be chilling in the background, just not being seen again? Are they just going to forget about him? Like, what's going to happen with him? And I think, like, what potentially could be happening here is that in the Dark Ether universe, there are versions of these characters that have existed in the background this whole time. I mean, we've already seen the Richtofen one, he's there, but there's also in the background Takeo has been there, and then there's Dempsey, and then there's Nikolai, and maybe they're living those lives that they were talking about in that ending sequence to the original Ether timeline. If you guys remember in that last sequence, when you're walking through the Dark Void, you hear these wishes of the characters. You hear how Richtofen wants to be a teacher, Dempsey wants to be a drill sergeant, and stuff like that. And what if they are living those lives in the current Dark Ether universe, and somehow they're going to be drugged into this all over again, but as new Dark Ether versions of these characters? Personally, I think that is just as likely, if not more likely, than the possibility of the actual original characters making a return. And honestly, I kind of prefer this one because I felt like they did wrap up Ultimus and Primus's stories in Black Ops 4, and I don't really know if there's a good reason to bring them back. Like, what story could you further tell with him? That, oh shoot, now Nikolai says that everything he sacrificed, he killed all his friends for nothing? I mean, that would be a little messed up to him, and everyone's gonna be like, what the hell, you killed us, and for what? There's still corruption in the world, zombies still got there and all that. Like, you know, it would be kind of weird, and I don't think I would like that all too much personally, but I don't know. It's just up to Treyarch how they want to tell their story at the end of the day. But one final idea I do want to share with you is kind of the mixture of both of these. And how that would work is that, sure, there's new Dark Ether versions of these characters that have been living their normal lives this whole time, but then maybe a being like the Shadowsmith shows up, and at the same time in the Dark Ether there's still the memories of our original characters. And what if he gets that memory and tries to impose it on the new innocent versions of these characters that have been living a normal life? And now, sure, they're still themselves and they have their own life that they experienced in the Dark Ether, but now they're getting haunted by these memories of past versions of themselves. And it would make sense this way because, I mean, how are you going to tie these four characters together without that? Without the old connection from the old timeline? You're just going to get them together just for no reason? They don't know each other in this timeline. Richtofen doesn't know Dempsey, Nikolai, or Takeo here, so the only way to be tied to each other is if those old memories were imposed on them, and now they're remembering these other people that now they feel like they know because of these new memories that have been imposed on them. And honestly, I think that could be a lot of fun, to be completely honest with you guys. It could be kind of a mixture of the new, that we're still playing with new versions of these characters, but also not ruining the ending to the original timeline, especially the sacrifice of Nikolai and how he killed everyone. Maybe they could just not remember that part or something like that, you know? Just stuff like that could just make the story that much more interesting. But I don't know. At this point, complete speculation, but as always, when it comes to videos like this, I love to hear your guys' thoughts and theories on how this could possibly work out. So definitely share all of those down in the comment section below. But for now, that's going to wrap it up for me. And I thank you guys all so much for watching, and I really do mean that. But hey, on your way out, I'd appreciate so much if you guys dropped a like and subscribe, bell, share, or any of that great stuff. But I'm going to go, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.